Complete side note, but last night I ate a slice of chocolate cake that my brother made and damn, amazing. You know, when I meet someone who doesn't like chocolate or anything chocolate, I just want to slap him. Because how do you not like chocolate? Hey, it's Mel. I hope that you're doing well. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about the 1927 Texas bank robbery, which occurred on the 23rd of December involving 4 men, and they robbed the Cisco First National Bank. The group's leader was dressed as Santa, hence the name, the Santa Bank Robbery. The 4 men who robbed the bank were Henry Helms, Robert Hill, Henry's relative Louis Davis, and finally Marshall Ratliff, who was the leader of the group. Apart from Louis Davis, all of the men were ex-cons. Marshall had a history of robbing banks. The group of 4 men were staying in a boarding house in Wichita Falls, and Marshall asked the owner of the boarding house, named Mrs. Midger Teller, for him to borrow a Santa costume. The 4 men then stole a car in Wichita Falls and headed for Cisco, arriving in the morning on the 23rd of December. Now, because Marshall served time in prison with a criminal record, a bad guy, he knew that he would be recognised in banks, so he thought, why not wear a disguise? And because it's the festive season, he decided to wear a Santa costume. Now, around this time in the year 1927, many banks in Texas were being robbed daily. This led the bankers to offer up a £5,000 reward for anyone who was able to shoot a bank robber. When it came to Marshall entering the bank, he first walked down the street to the bank dressed in a Santa costume and was approached by several happy kids. Some of the kids actually proceeded to follow Marshall, who is dressed as Santa, to the bank. Once Marshall set foot into the bank, he was greeted by the cashier and other staff of the bank, saying, "Hello Santa, how are you?" Yet Marshall didn't respond. One of the men from the group who were robbing the bank was Robert Hill, who entered the bank straight after Marshall. Robert pulled out a gun, pointing it at the cashier. Then Henry Helms and Louis Davis entered the bank. All men were armed. Marshall ordered the cashier to open the safe. Once the safe was opened, he collected money and put it into a sack that Marshall was hiding under his Santa costume. Then Marshall forced someone to open the bank vault. Now, as this robbery was in progress, a woman along with her 6-year-old daughter, Frances, entered the bank in hopes of meeting Santa. Once they realized what was going on, the two safely escaped and ran to the police to get help. As the woman left the bank and ran to the police, she ended up shouting, quote, "They're robbing the bank," end quote. The police chief, deputy and other officers went to the bank, covering all exits. As the police were covering the bank, Marshall at this point had emptied the vault entirely. Robert Hill actually saw someone outside of the bank and began firing his gun to show whoever was outside that he was armed. A huge shootout began with the police firing at the robbers in the bank and the robbers firing at the police. Marshall and his crew of robbers took 2 young girls hostage and forced them outside the bank through a side door, heading towards their car. Some hostages of the bank escaped, however 7 of them were wounded. Another shootout occurred in the alley as the robbers were trying to get into their car. Now, the police deputy and chief were severely wounded. The chief would die 7 hours later and the deputy would die on the 17th of January. Due to the huge shootout, Marshall and Louis were also severely wounded. However, according to witnesses who were in the bank, they say that Marshall never fired a single shot. As the 4 bank robbers got into their car with the money and 2 hostages, they soon realised that their car was almost out of gas and one of their tyres had been shot. At this point, the robbers are also being chased by the police, and in a quick panic, the 4 men decided to rob another car owned by a 14-year-old called Woody. Woody willingly gave his car to the robbers, but took his keys with him. As this all occurred, 6 civilians were also wounded. Once the group of men got into their second car owned by Woody and they realised that the car would not start, they then proceeded to move back into their first car. However, at this point, Louis Davis was unconscious, he was dead. Now, once they took off, they only then realised, dumbasses, accidentally forgot the money that they had left in the second car along with their unconscious friend Louis. They forgot the money. Bearing in mind, it's the 1920s. Hot wiring a car didn't come into use until 1999. The now group of 3 men, not only are the 3 men being chased by the police, but an angry mob of people is also following them. The mob and the police soon found Lewis along with the money. The money was eventually returned to the bank. And soon, 7 miles away from town, the 3 robbers abandoned their car, released their 2 hostages, and went on to escaping on foot. 2 of the robbers were wounded, especially Marshall, and without food or water, and due to the icy weather, he was suffering severely. The robbers had stolen $12,400 in cash. The next morning, the 3 men then proceeded to steal another car, and a huge search party was made, and at this point it was the biggest search party in Texas history. The 3 men now in their 3rd stolen vehicle, and they were doing okay driving along the road until they wrecked their car near Putman. The 3 men then decided to steal another car owned by a man called Carl Wiley. Carl was forced to drive and was taken hostage for 24 hours. The robbers soon let Carl live and let him have his car back. Eventually, the 3 robbers were ambushed by a sheriff of Young County at South Bend as they were trying to cross a river. Once the 3 men were caught, they soon faced trials. Robert Hill pleaded guilty to armed robbery, and in March 1928, he was sentenced to 99 years in prison. He would end up escaping prison 3 times but was recaptured every time. In the 1940s, Robert was granted parole and became a better citizen, and he also changed his name. Now, as for Henry Helms, who shot the deputy and the chief, in late February 1928, he was given the death sentence. He died in the electrocution chair on the 6th of September 1929. Leader Marshall Ratliff was convicted of armed robbery at first, in 1928 on the 27th of January, and was also sentenced to 99 years in prison. On the 30th of March, he was sentenced to death for his role in the death of the deputy and chief, even though no one saw him fire a gun. Marshall tried to get the insanity plea by acting crazy and telling people that he was insane. Marshall tried escaping the prison he was in, which was Eastland County Jail, but he also wounded his jailer. Now, after the angry mob of people found out that Marshall escaped death and was in prison, they lost their shit, went over to the prison, pushing past guards. They grabbed Marshall out of his cell, tied his hands and feet, and decided to hang him. They tried 2 times. The first time was unsuccessful. The second time he was hung on a power pole, it was successful, and he was pronounced dead at 9:55 p.m. on 19th of November at age 26. Marshall's family took possession of his body. However, no one was charged for the hanging of Marshall. He was soon buried, and the bank where this took place, which, reminder, was the First National Bank in Cisco. It is a newer building, but it still stands to this day, and in the building on the walls there is a picture of the bank robbery and the people that were involved. So yeah, that was the Santa bank robbery of Texas. It's an interesting case, and yet everything went wrong. If you're going to rob a bank, make sure that your escape vehicle, the car, has gas in it. And also don't forget to leave the money behind, okay? These robbers didn't really get away with anything. To me, it's funny, the fact that you forget the money, you don't have gas in your car, and only was Marshall having a disguise. Why not have all of the other crew members, robbers, have a disguise also? These people were clearly just desperate. I mean, 1927, I guess it's desperate times as people are daily robbing banks. But if I'm going to rob a bank, I'm not, by the way. If I was, I would be the driver, because if I walked in a bank, I'd be recognised right away. That was the 1927 Texas Santa bank robbery. Interesting case, yet just conducted by stupid people. This is most likely going to be my last Christmas video. I am going to try and film a what I got for Christmas video. Hopefully, no promises. Hope you've enjoyed this video. Have a lovely morning, evening, night, day, wherever you are in the world. Hope that you're staying safe and you have a happy new year. Hope you have a lovely Christmas. If you don't celebrate Christmas, hope you have a lovely day. I'll see you very soon. Take care. Bye-bye.